It's the top 5 burn spells.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to Commander Countdown, the show where we ask hard-hitting questions of the Commander community and bring their answers to you.
And of course, thank you to our sponsor, EDHREC, for bringing this show to you. You will see a little bit of them later once we go over the deck list that was submitted by one of our patrons. But first, we're going to start with our honorable mentions for today's topic, the top 5 burn spells for Commander. These are going to be 2 spells that did not make the list or just did not quite crack the top 5.
I don't know that I've ever cast a burn spell in my life, but if Nerd Girl were here, and I think she's just upstairs, she would tell me that Blood for the Blood God should have absolutely made the list. This is an 8 black, red instant, but it costs 1 less to cast for each creature that died this turn. Discard your hand, draw 8, deal 8 to each opponent, and then exile the spell. I have seen Nerd Girl play this in her Magar deck and recur it after a board wipe and just dome the entire table. It is disgusting.
Yeah, it conveniently works very well with lots of other burn spells because those are getting creatures off the table and just reduce. Like you know, it's always going to be 3 mana. It's always going to be 3 mana.
Every deck that has 2 devotion to black to spend is going to be killing stuff.
It rewards you for just like spending all of your resources in your hand to kill the creatures on the board because you're just refilling it with a new 8.
Yeah, and traditionally these kind of burn decks, these Rakdos decks, don't have a ton of card advantage in them. Being able to get low on cards, dome the table for 8, draw 8 on someone else's turn and do it all again, that's pretty busted.
Somebody had to add that exile Blood for the Blood God line at the end. Like I don't feel like you typically see that aside from the most problematic. Like it's like, oh, extra turn, gotta exile it. This does not seem like that kind of thing, but I'm sure while they were designing it, it was like, hey, you know, you can just loop this over and over again, right?
I like reading the last line of text, exile Blood for the Blood God, with the exclamation point on the end. Just get rid of the thing. Okay. Veggie, what's your honorable mention?
My honorable mention, what happened? My honorable mention. Okay.
Seashells.
My honorable mention is Expansion Explosion. Expansion side of this is 2 Izzet hybrid mana, instant, copy target instant or sorcery spell with mana value 4 or less. You may choose new targets for the copy. And Explosion, which is the side that I really mean here, is X, 2 blue, 2 red, instant, deals X damage to any target, and target player draws X cards.
Yeah, this card brings back terrible memories of Wilderness Reclamation in Standard. Just having a boatload of mana in your arena mana pool on your end step and doming the opponent for 20 or 30 or 40. And then when that becomes the entire meta because no one bans anything, then you get to use the expansion side as a counterspell for when someone tries to interact with you with their counterspell.
Yeah, that's I don't understand what you have a problem with there. All of those things sound great to me.
When the only major innovation in Standard for several months was to add Teferi to the Teamer deck, we had a problem.
Look, it was the green card that was the issue. Okay, this is by itself pretty tame. The 4 mana you have to spend before getting anything out of this does hold it back. But every mana after that, both being a point of damage and drawing cards, makes my heart happy.
Me too. Imagine Sphinx's Rev, except I'm going to hurt you instead of heal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it being tacked onto a very relevant spell to protect one of your other spells, or like a 2 mana to copy a 4 mana. There's lots of juicy spells out there that your opponents could be casting that you can grab.
Would you like to expand on that? He's about to explode.
All right, on to the top 5. Your number 5 choice for Commander burn spells is a very good pick. It is Fire Covenant, and we don't talk about this card enough. It's 1, a black and a red. For an instant, you also pay X life in addition as an additional cost, and it deals X damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures.
That is a pretty powerful effect, sort of like a Toxic Deluge-ish at home in Rakdos colors.
Right. And it being selective means in some cases, it's even better.
That makes a lot of sense. If you played this card recently? Like, is it usually that big a swing, or is it just a removal spell?
It's both, because you have the option like, okay, 3 mana to and some life to kill the thing that you need. Reasonable, not terribly efficient. But when you spread that out, even just to like 2 separate targets, 3 separate targets, it's well worth the life that you're paying. Plus, usually you're not trying to burn out your opponent's largest creatures. You need some targeted removal for the little dinky things that are giving them special abilities that you can't get to. So sometimes this is a full blowout on like, oh, the wizards player or like the elves player, I just needed to hit your very relevant pieces. Now I've ruined everything and not touched any of my own stuff.
You do ruin everything quite a bit.
I try.
It is interesting to me that this is an old card that only targets creatures. I feel like most burn spells from way back in the day also allowed you to go face. But I don't know. I feel like it's odd that they felt the need to restrict that on this one.
You don't want to have a spell where you can just be like, oh, I am up in life. Great. The game is over. Because you can just be like, oh, I'm at 20, you're at 19, I win. And so that's probably why it is restricted to only creatures. Ta-da. All right. Okay.
Your number 4 pick for best burn spell is one that I'm not actually sure is really a burn spell. It's Blasphemous Act. 8 in a red, but cost 1 less for each creature on the battlefield. Deal 13 damage to each creature. And to me, that's a little weird because I think of burn spells as like targeting, but wiping the board is a pretty powerful effect, and I don't blame you guys for thinking of this first when it came to dealing damage to things. This card is great. I've played an awful lot of it in my control decks. When my opponents put a bunch of stuff on the board and I have a bunch of planeswalkers in play, I get to 1 mana wrath everything, get value from all my things, and take my turn as usual.
Yeah, this is probably the most played card on the entire list. I mean, that's it. It's for sure top 5 red staples. And like damage to creature, that's the definition of burn, right?
Is it?
I guess.
Well, it's just red.
Is it red? Burn spell. What I'm looking for out of a burn spell is probably different from the average person because you can do all kinds of shenanigans with this. Because you are dealing damage to creatures. So any effects that are triggered by that still happen. Putting like repercussion on the board. There's other things that care about how much damage you've done to creatures or how much damage you've done over creatures, like Agar, the giant boy. Cool. I'm gonna draw like 12 cards per creature that I just hit. And so to me, it's very burn because not other board wipes don't do that.
I think I'll accept that. I was about to ask you, has the 13 ever been relevant? Have you ever run into a 14 power creature that you really wanted to kill and just couldn't? I like the flavor of Blasphemy and 13 and like Star of Extinction dealing 20 to everything. I always ask myself, is there a reason for that number or is it just flavor? Yeah,
Blasphemy is 13 and an Extinction event is 20. That seems...
that makes sense because you start with 20 life in real Magic formats.
I feel like on the flavor scale, it's a little off of like versus the mechanical scale. Terraforming world-ending event, 20. Saying, hey, there's no God, 13. I'm satisfied.
Okay.
Coming in at number 3 is Comet Storm. X and 2 red instant with multi-kicker 1. So you choose, you can pay 1 at any number of... That's not how words work for reading. Multi-kicker 1, so you can pay that 1 any number of times as an additional cost. Choose any target, then choose another target for each time this spell was kicked and deals X damage to each of those targets.
Yeah, this card has a special place in my heart because my first commander deck was Hinata. And with Hinata in play, the multi-kicker doesn't matter. You can just target any single, like every creature on the board and just pay X and never have to pay 1 because Hinata reduces the mana cost for each number of targets that you choose.
That's gross.
Yep.
The first thing that comes to my mind for this is, how is this different from Fireball?
I would have to read Fireball to know that.
I don't remember. Oh, that's a big difference.
Yeah, that's an enormous
difference. Fireball being 1 red less. That's way better. No, dividing the damage versus just being like, oh, the cost you paid, every target gets that much. Yeah, I don't. That's why you don't see Fireball.
Yep.
we haven't really talked too much about like the speed of these spells. Both this one and Fire Covenant being instants with this kind of power is very relevant as well. There are decks that benefit a lot from being able to hold that mana open, like all of the decks that I want to play with red in them.
To expand on the Hinata point, I had a Shark Typhoon in play on someone's end step, and I just pumped X to the maximum, wiped the board, and had like a 40-40 Shark or something killing people. It was great.
Instant speed. Good. Shark Typhoon. Best burn spell.
Only if you slam it, though. Coming in at number 2 is Chandra's Ignition, 3 and 2 red sorcery. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each other creature and each opponent. And I didn't know this card existed until I drew it in one of our Commander games, and it did an awful lot of work. I think I had, like a 50-50 zombie army by the end of the turn, and then just domed everyone for 50 ending the game.
Right.
Was that fun?
Yes.
I think so.
I love this card. I think this is exactly the kind of payoff that should exist if you can make a creature that is that big. Because sometimes I don't want to just like, oh, I've made massive creature. Now I have to like swing it at somebody. I have to like trample over, kill one player, have the other players kill me. Like this is you've done it. You've made a 40-40. You should win for that.
Yep. And it gets rid of, the messy middle parts of the Commander game of actually dealing with other people and having them choose actions like blocking your creature. No, you get to play solitaire with this one. You just get to build your own big creature, dome everyone for 40, and the game is over.
Yes. And like, very honestly, that is not an easy thing to do. It's not like, oh, well, that's no fun. Anybody can make a 40-40. Like you have to work for that. And I like that there is a payoff for it. And I know that some people do not like this card.
And it's also nice to see it in double red. Usually these red-based decks don't have giant creatures. So if you're doing this, making giant creatures in red, I think you especially deserve it.
Because you are targeting your own creature. It's not just like, deal damage equal to the highest power that you have. If your target gets blown up in response, you get nothing.
Yeah, it's not like Fling, those kinds of effects where the sacrifice is part of the cost and you can't interact and blow it out.
All right. Number 1 on the list of top 5 Commander burn spells. Honestly, I disagree, but we knew what it was gonna be. It's Lightning Bolt. Good old 1 red, instant, deal 3 to what you want.
Yep. And I kind of disagree with you that it shouldn't be this high on the list because Commander players love their identity cards, right? You have Soul Ring being the identity of the Commander format, Thoughtseize or Dark Ritual being the identity of black, and Lightning Bolt is the identity of red. If I get a mana, I'm going to punch you in the face for 3. That's every red mage ever.
I don't see anybody playing Ancestral Recall in blue.
I wonder why that is.
I get it. I get that it is played a lot. I don't think that it is terribly good in Commander. It's like a single target burn spell that I think people get past 3 being relevant very fast.
Yeah, it's weird for me to hear you say that as like a Commander player because 3 damage for 1 mana in every other format is outstanding, right? Mm-hmm. People complain about how Lightning Bolt invalidates basically every creature because it's so efficient. Yeah. To hear in another format that's just not good enough is kind of almost hard to believe.
Yeah. I mean, well, okay, let's look at the rest of the list because every single other spell on here, it either straight up is like a board wipe or gives you the option for multiple targets at whatever cost, mana or life, to take out multiple things. And that's the big difference is you can't do 1-for-1s in Commander are bad. That just puts you down against 2 people.
Yeah, I guess I kind of feel the same way about Bolt as we did with Chandra's Ignition, right? Like, you need to build around it. You need to use the cantrippy nature of it, the 1 mana spell, to earn your win with it, or do something broken like NerdGirl does with Magar. And if this makes the cut in your deck, then your deck is probably pretty cool, and I would like to play it.
I will give Lightning Bolt a lot of credit as a Commander card. It's like Mana Tithe. You will get in these situations where an opponent's like, you only have 1 red open. I am not worried about dropping to 3 life, or I'm not worried about getting my very important combo piece blown up at instant speed for this 1 red mana. And you're like, Lightning Bolt.
Bolt you. All right, we're over here in Archidec taking a look at a deck list that one of our patrons submitted. GamerDad sent us this Torbran list, and we're going to take a look at it, look at what they did, and then try to make some improvements to it later.
Torbran is 1 and 3 red. You are very red. For 2/4, if a red source you would control would deal red damage to an opponent or permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much red damage plus 2 red damage instead.
Red damage?
Yes.
Red damage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything you got, pumped by 2. 4 artifacts. We don't even need no ramp. Greaves, Crypt, Pyromancer's Goggles.
I'm a little afraid of what these Greaves are going to end up getting attached to, though.
Bloodshot Cyclops. I have not seen a Bloodshot Cyclops in a long time.
And this is one of those things that sacrificing is part of the cost. The opponent can't interact with it. If you get a big thing, then you're just going to dome them.
Because I expected just like, burn spells. So are we taking a different approach here where, because that's also a single target. So Torbran is also not like, it's only increasing by 2.
Yeah, it's kind of a big red kind of deck. Torbran is just kind of the payoff, but you're playing really fun big red cards. Like there's that Drakaseth. I think that's what the Greaves are going on. Drakaseth not great without haste, but with haste it's unbelievable, dealing 4 to anything and then 3 to 2 other things.
Yeah.
And then just hitting someone for 7.
Right. And then, it's likely going to be 6, 5, and 5.
And to say nothing of the Dockside Extortionist that's right next to it.
Mm-hmm. So I'm already pleasantly surprised by the approach to this deck because I've seen Torbran, I've seen a million Torbrans, and this is already headed in a different direction. But of course, you also have to have the must includes for the deck. Gutter Snipe, Sharpshooter, Flamesmith. You're still benefiting a lot off of spreading little pings around.
We do have an awful lot of creatures, it seems, in the deck for a Gutter Snipe build. And Steamkin, wow, a lot of instant and sorcery payoffs. I wonder, do we have Lightning Bolt?
I hope so. Some nice budget options with Panicked Altasaur. Scythecaller Raptor can be brutal against specific decks, like most of mine.
Yeah, and it's nice to have that insurance to know that you're not going to be interacted with when you cast your Chandra's Ignition.
Right. It's like you take 6 for that counterspell. Give me that damage.
Leyline of Combustion. It baffles me that ley lines are playable in 100-card singleton decks.
That I think is such a telling thing about Commander as a format is that ley lines, are they playable on this? No, they're not. They're bad. They're bad. The odds are very bad for you to get them, and you don't want to cast them. But that one time where you get it in your opening hand feels so good that it overcomes the fact that it's against the odds,
That 19 out of the 20 times you're sad to see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
But the one time is you're happy enough that it beats out those 19. Notable also the Fire Emancipation to casually triple the damage. I don't know how in-depth we want to get about this, but don't forget, people, if there are multiple replacement effects that affect you. So in this case, very important because Torbran is a replacement effect for damage and Fire Emancipation is an effect for damage. There are 2 ways you could do that. You could add 2 damage and then triple it, or you could triple it and then add 2 damage. It is the target's choice. It affects you or one of your permanents. You choose how those are applied.
Yeah, it feels like that shouldn't be the case, but that is how the rules work, but it feels so bad because it's your effect. You should order them, but if it's targeting your opponent's things or them, then
yes. And very important to know because that's not common knowledge, and don't get got if you are the red mage, somebody that actually knows how it works.
Fiery Temper. So I don't think we saw any other Madness cards, but we did see a few ways to discard your hand, like Magus of the Wheel, that kind of thing.
Final Fortune, I respect it. What a great card. And sometimes that's all you need is one more turn to close things out.
All right, and we have the host of burn spells here, Bolt, Strike, good old Risk Factor, Blast from the Past.
Urza's Rage. See, there's some good choices here. Like this is another one where is the spell terribly good? Very debatable. But do you feel amazing casting this? 100% of the time. Nice and simple on lands. I feel like there's some room there to to get creative, but mountains do the job.
The dignified one choice of Planeswalker for your red deck. Of course, it's Jaya Ballard. That's what everyone would have thought. Banefire, just uncounterable big damage. I respect it. Grape Shot. We're storming off here.
Oh yeah. Some of these choices do make me very happy. Like Sizzle, that's a classic. Does it hold up? Also not quite, but like you get to cast Sizzle.
How many times do you get to cast Sizzle?
As many times as you get to cast Leyline of Combustion.
But when you cast both in the same game.
Right. Okay. So that is the list. I've already got some pretty strong thoughts about it off the bat, but first we're going to head over to EDHREC, see what most people are playing in Torbran builds, and then how each of us individually would like adapt this deck to ourselves.
Right off the bat, Group Slug is an excellent archetype name. I have no idea what it is, but it's great. Do you know what it is?
Yeah.
What is it?
It's the opposite of Group Hug. So Group Slug is a lot of effects that like will deal damage to all players equally. At each player's upkeep, that player takes 2 damage. And so it's lots of those effects, but when you're amplifying those with Torbran, it becomes very unequal very quickly.
I like it. Okay.
Oh, hey, Ashenil, does that totally ruin your life if somebody knows how Magic works? Because they can just be like, all right, I like it to get +2 and then have it go to Ashenil's power.
Yeah, I think so. I think they can apply them in that order.
Yeah. Be careful, red mages. Learn the rules.
Prisoner's Dilemma. Yeah. Speaking of breaking symmetry, this card is. People have strong opinions about it.
Mm-hmm. I do think that it is a very fun commander card for your average player, and when you're boosting the damage, it turns out it's a very easy way to eliminate players. If you haven't seen the Murders at Karlov Manor pre-con game with Daniel Holt.
Yeah, I don't like this card index with damage doublers. I feel like this is meant to be a low stakes, I'll get you back for this later in the game kind of card. But with damage doublers or triplers, it can just end the game.
Mm-hmm. I think that's particularly when I want it to happen because, Prisoner's Dilemma, I think, it should be high stakes. Yeah, see, these are like some Group Slug cards. We did see some of these, the Mentor and the Alchemist. Like Roiling Vortex, Slug.
Vortex seems great. Like turning off life gain, which is everywhere in Commander, and doming people for free spells, which are everywhere in Commander. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, Confluence is interesting because typically I don't think this card is very good. I think there are cards that do this kind of thing much better. But since it's separate instances of dealing damage, each one of those is amplified by Torbran. So like even if you just pick the 1 damage each time for all three modes, that's 9 damage. I definitely would have liked to see some more like damage increasers, but like ones that are hard to rules stack. So Mechanized Warfare would be nice. Lightning Bolt, 68% of decks.
I told you it's an identity card. Mm-hmm. Like if you're playing Burn, it's there.
Oh, the Incinerator. That I think that's a fun card that I don't think we saw on the list.
I got by this one time in Standard and had to read the card after I died. Just like, what? Excuse me?
That's the kind of card that I like for Commander, where it's like the kind of card that shouldn't work in other constructed formats.
Ferocidon punish those token decks.
Ooh.
So good it had to be banned.
Right. Not in Commander. I know people yelled at me for talking about ban list stuff.
Make a TikTok about that.
Yeah, you're right. But yeah, Runaway Seamkin is just, if you're playing mono red, it's a fun card. It's good. And I think, Spear is your most efficient way to be able to deal 1 damage to each player.
Yeah, I think so. Just that getting that down on turn 1 is actually a really big deal.
We've been scrolling for a while, and it's still at like 30%, 31%. So a lot of these Torbran decks are very narrow. Like the builds are similar.
Yeah, and Wizards has just been kind of reluctant to print burn spells that go face recently. Like we haven't gotten a good one since probably Ravnica Allegiance, the Spectacle cards.
Neheb, that's a good time. Because you can just convert your face damage into mana afterward.
too bad the afflict damage doesn't actually go up because it's not Neheb that's dealing the damage, but Brash Taunter. There we go. Star of Extinction, baby.
Like the Brash Taunter and like Stuffy Doll effect is very fun for Torbran because you get a double. Say you lightning bolt your own Taunter. That's 5 damage that hits the Taunter. And then when the Taunter redirects it somewhere else, you add another 2 to that for 7 damage for your lightning bolt. Price of Progress. Mean.
That's a controversial card, I feel.
Yeah?
I think it's great. You know what? There should be a cost to playing multicolor commander decks. And if you're going to play a monocolored one, then you should get a payoff for that.
Right. I totally agree. And especially with GamerDad's build of like, let's not worry about it. Mountains, Urza Saga, this is like prime for that.
But you'll probably lose some friends. But that's the price of progress.
There we go.
Shock. Just shock makes the cut in 28% of decks.
Right. I am very surprised.
Oh, God. I hate Red Elemental Blast with a fiery passion. I should not have to worry when my opponent has 1 red up about my spell being countered. What the hell? That is a design mistake, and nothing you say can convince me otherwise.
Well, look, at least there isn't another like functional reprint of it.
Of course, yeah, that would be terrible.
Yeah. Oh, weird. Oh, look at this Pyroblast.
I have a terrible relationship with Pyroblast. When my opponent has 1 red mana up, I shouldn't need to worry about my spell getting countered. Love Mana Geyser, especially in GamerDad's list in particular. There's a lot of big spells in there.
I think we saw a lot of these, not as much of like the impulse draw stuff. It's a little tougher for GamerDad's build because there were higher cost like creatures and spells and things like that. And I think your typical Torbran burn deck is running a lot of very low cost things. There's almost no risk to the impulse draws.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you can spice it up a little bit with that Ruby Medallion because like if you're in mono red, you don't get a lot of mana acceleration besides the one shot like Seething Songs, Slug, Spellslinger, Damage Amplification. Ooh.
Virtue of Courage. That's kind of everything you want in a card, right? It's the burn spell on the instant side, and then on the enchantment side, you get card draw to do it all over again.
Yeah, that might be my like number one on my list to include.
Descent into Avernus. I love this card. I don't think it was in the list, but this is when you need to speed run a commander game. When you need life totals to get lower every single turn, and when you want people to just get to the point and cast their big spells, this is the card to do it.
Right. I'm very much with you. I'm a big supporter of Descent into Avernus and anything you can play it in. But when you are also a deck that is gaining advantage from this because of your damage amplification, that's 100% win.
Which of you lunatics are running Blood Moon in your deck?
Look, if you're mono red. Also, hold on. I was about to defend it, and I'm like, because I wanted to be like, oh yeah, if you're running mono red, sometimes you just need an edge. I'm sure it's not 25% of you that are running this.
I'm very disappointed you did not get the lunatics joke.
Oh, all right, I'll go.
All right, I'll take over from here. Yeah, 25% of people feel it's socially acceptable to run blood. What does that say about red mages in general? That a full quarter of them think that that's fine.
It certainly does have a place. That place is at very high power tables and CEDH. And at that point, why are you playing Torbran? Hey, Leyline, 23%.
Which is about like 10x the percent of the time you'll have it in your opening hand.
Battles. Battles. I love battles in Commander. Play more battles in Commander. They make for they're much more powerful than people realize. And you also make for an interesting like politics of like, hey, if you can break the battle that player is defending for me, then we can use that to do something.
Or I can make you defend this battle and just let you have you let me attack it.
Karsus dealing 3 damage, i.e. 5 damage to all creatures is a nice light board wipe. And then, look, Refraction Elemental would be nuts in Torbran.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Just 4 damage to each opponent anytime you do a thing. Yes.
What does it take to flip that? How many points of damage does the front side have?
4.
That's it?
It takes a shock.
It takes 1 shock.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane.
Yes, battles, play them.
Chandra Torch has frustrated me many, many, many times when I have my Supreme Verdict or 4-mana board wipe and my opponent says, great, you've tapped out. Here you go. You can't deal with this. It's going to ping you every turn and give me cards.
I am still surprised at how high a percentage that this is getting played. I'd much rather, I think, be running Koth, where it's just, okay, I'm grabbing mountains twice, and if you don't hit him, then the emblem is going to ruin everybody's lives.
That's absolutely wild to hear someone say that, oh, maybe Chandra's overplayed, and I would much rather have Koth. As like a 60-card player, that is an utterly insane thing to hear.
Now, this was one of the first things I thought about when we saw that pile of mountains in GamerDad's list. One Valakut is going to do some work, but this card that is colored red is not the color red, so it does not get the Torbran boost.
Yep. How many of you guys have been playing that wrong? Out of curiosity. People get confused about that. People think that the red lands are red cards, and they're not.
Yeah, so it's like some extra. I think I would want to include a lot of these in the list. You know, card draw is always a little tough for mono red. We saw a lot of permanents in GamerDad's list, so Nykthos gets some juice.
Yeah, having just the 3 devotion from Torbran alone is a pretty big deal.
Right.
Okay, so we've taken a look at the EDHREC page. We've talked about the list at length. Veggie, what would you change, and what rating does GamerDad's list get on the Veggie scale?
It immediately got big points from me for being a pretty different take on Torbran. We could see that players in general are, it's just like, oh, lots of little burn spells. They're either going like hardcore Spellslinger or Group Slug. And we saw a lot of very fun, a lot of very fun creatures, and some higher cost spells. I think I would definitely want to add some more of these utility lands in, for sure Valakut, and just like a couple more options so that you don't run out of cards. Give me that War Room and stuff. Yes, the Virtue of Courage, that for sure I think belongs in this list. Just a home run on with both modes. And I know I haven't mentioned it much, but I think this deck would be really fun with some battles in it. Not only like because they're generally good and fun in Commander, but you have a very unique way to be able to flip them since you can just burn them. I would give this list a 7 out of 10. It does, I think, struggle a little bit to lean in one direction or another, but I really enjoyed a lot of those little choices, like those feel-good cards and like Sizzle and things like that they're not fully optimal, but like they make me feel good.
Yeah, Torbran isn't fully optimal, right? So you get to pass on playing the other cards. So for my take on the deck, I think that there is this weird tension between the big red spells and the little Spellslinger things, and I think that would be the biggest criticism I have for it, right? You have these gutter snipey effects, things that pay you off for casting cheap spells, and there aren't that many of those because we've loaded up with big stuff. Mm-hmm. I very much appreciate resisting the urge to put every single damage doubler and tripler under the sun into the deck. I think if you had done that, it would have been pretty boring to me. So I think you could go in 2 different directions. You could either fully embrace the big spell deck with your Drakaseths and whatever you have, when I saw the Fiery Temper in the list, I was like, oh, we can do something with madness here. And I was thinking like Ox of Agonis, Wheel Effects, and a card that didn't come up anywhere on EDHREC, but I love in red burn decks is Bomat Courier. Just the 1 mana artifact creature that puts a card from the top under it every single time. 1 red, discard your hand, get all those cards. And if you have the madness cards in your hand at the same time, you actually want to discard that stuff. So overall, I think as the deck is built, 8, because we showed great restraint in how we built it and putting cool cards in it. And if we were to pick a lane, go one direction or the other, I think it could go as high as a 9.
Thanks, GamerDad, for submitting this sick Torbran list. It was a lot of fun to go over. And of course, thank you to our sponsor, EDHREC, making it very easy for us to find new and fun cards and figure out what the typical Torbran list looks like.
Yeah, and thank you so much to everyone who subscribed to the Patreon. We've had an overwhelming response in the last few days. Thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. If you are one of those new patrons, you might be entitled to see your own deck on this show. So check out the Discord, and if you want to see your deck on the show but aren't a patron, consider signing up.
Yeah, you might be entitled to Commander Countdown compensation.
Have you or a loved one been hurt by Commander Countdown? All right. I think we've said everything we need to say for this episode. We'll see you next time on Commander Countdown.